Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Daily Night. I am your host, Brian Smith, and this is one of my favorite podcasts of the year. Doesn't matter what year it is. It's talking about the quarterback battle at any school or schools as it may be. And this one is directly about the UCF Knights. Now, I have an article that this is going in on Inside the Knights. And this is just the extra, my opinionated part to it, and some things that UCF needs to do. Just to highlight the article real quick, a couple of key points. Number one, UCF, the last I checked, was at 10 players that have transferred into the program, including John Rice Plumlee, who is one of the quarterbacks battling for the starting job. Keep that in mind. Several of these guys are offensive players. Kobe Hudson, Gamble, you've got two offensive linemen, you've got John Rice Plumlee. Continuity. How quickly, because these are all very talented athletes, very talented. Two offensive tackles, they need to come together, and that is very, very difficult. College football is complex enough as it is. The transfer portal has escalated it. The hamster wheel is spinning very fast for a lot of these guys because you need to install the playbook. You need to have an understanding of concepts, down and distance, what we're really trying to do, big picture. Do I take shots if you're Plumlee, or even if you're Mikey Keene and you've got these guys that you're throwing to now, Hudson, Gamble, it is uber complex. So I'm going to, like I said, the article will define a lot of this, but this podcast specifically is going to talk about some of the interjectory points of how do you do it? What's the best method? Is there a best method to finding a quarterback with all the additions to the roster? When do you break it down to just two guys getting reps in spring ball? Do you do that? When is it best to tell the guys? Do you worry about transfers? There's a million different things going on, and Gus Malzahn and his staff have a lot on their plate to try to manage this situation because quarterback, make no mistake, impacts every position on the roster, especially on offense, but transfers can happen because a receiver is not comfortable with who you pick as the quarterback. I mean, those things happen. And remember, with the transfer portal, a player can go into it and he can be eligible somewhere else immediately. So it doesn't take much to push somebody, albeit accidentally, to go play someplace else. So with this podcast, please understand this is my opinion. And it is not meant to be like inside sources or anything else. I haven't asked, I haven't even tried. I enjoy looking at this, as odd as it may seem, like a fan. Like UCF is the school that I'm hoping does well. Obviously, I run a site covering it. I'm going to make more money if the Knights play well, but that's not what this is. It's more fun to cover somebody that's winning. So whichever individual or individuals end up playing quarterback, I hope the following works out because they will have a lot of success for themselves and the team and for me and everybody else. You got to win with quarterback play the way the rules are set up in college, and it's going to be complex. So number one here, this is my first thing. And this is an old school part, and maybe I'm just a little old school in general. Again, I talk about this in the article. It's leadership, and it started in the weight room, in the conditioning. The players are going to watch all the non-quarterbacks, which guys for the Knights go out there and compete the hardest at the quarterback position in the weight room, not just themselves, pushing Johnny Richardson or pushing Sam Jackson, whatever the conversations they have, not even in the weight room, but talking about what they did. These guys all talk, they're friends and stuff, but it's still a competition. It is still a competition. You gain the respect of your teammates. Quite frankly, a lot more in the offseason than during the season because there's so much work that goes into it. The number of hours that you put in compared to the game time that you play, no sport is more unbalanced than football. 12 games is all you get, and then potentially a bowl. That's it. There you go. Even the guys that go to the playoffs, it's only 2 plus, if you got a conference champion, the most you can play is 15 or 16. Like if you play one of those extra games, a few teams will play or whatever. It's still not a lot. They all know that if you do not put in your due diligence in the weight room and you lead and you do it by example as well as verbally, you're not as likely to be the guy that the players rally behind. Quarterbacks that fail in either one of those categories, whether it's verbal or whether it's the actual physical nature of how they compete, are probably going to struggle to be the starting quarterback anywhere unless they're just unbelievably accurate or something like that. And while I won't mention names, there are guys in the last 20 years I know about that I was told flat out guys didn't like them, but they were just so good at what they did, they had to play them. Those teams just don't win championships, though. It's just, this is the best we have. You won't find a guy that is hated win a championship. I guarantee you. If you look back, just think about the teams, even this past year for Georgia, everybody respected the quarterback. They didn't necessarily think he was the greatest athlete or whatever, but Bennett did a good job in the moment. And he had a couple of the best throws of the entire college football season in the second half against Alabama. That also helps. He came to fruition because he put in the time and he put in the work. Good for him. Can that happen at UCF or anywhere else? Absolutely. So that's where it starts, the offseason, and now that gets to the point that we're actually in, and that's spring ball. Spring practice, it's just about the simple things. How hard are you working and how accurate are you? Do you know the playbook? Are you comfortable? And do you make those guys around you better? Any other opportunity to get better in the, in between practices, going over the playbook, that all matters too. It all matters. If you look at the number of players, whether it's UCF or Florida State or Clemson or anybody else, that have transferred at quarterback in the last year or so, it's insane. Remember, there's only one guy as a general rule that can start and consistently play. The school's playing two quarterbacks 9 out of 10 times. It just doesn't really work out to be in a dominant team. I know there was a team in the late 90s at Ohio State that was that way, but that is truly an unusual scenario. Maybe Mikey Keene and John Rice Plumlee. I think those are the two the most likely. That could work out. Maybe it's Keene. Maybe it's – I have no idea. I haven't asked. And I'm going to this looking at it from a fan perspective. I kind of want to just find out like everybody else. Could I probably find out something if I – quite probably. I don't want to. These guys need to compete and go out and do what they do. And, Gus and his staff need to announce the starter when that happens. And my guess is that'll be when the quarterback trots on the field in the first game. That's just how this works. Being stated, there's also the other part of this, and that's the players will know ahead of time. What we think is not relevant as fans and media, alumni and passersby. The players will know. And if for some reason it doesn't jive with the players, what the coaches decide, it'll cause chaos. It will not work. That's the problem with coaching. Sometimes even if you're just dead set on it, if you do it, it just causes catastrophe. That happens sometimes. There's been a few of those around college football that have happened. I know it caused some problems at Ohio State in 2015. Notre Dame season 2016 went in the toilet. Quarterback situation. You can go south just with one spot if you have NFL receivers. If players don't like a guy or don't like something about his leadership, his attitude, it can go south in a hurry. On the flip side, if they rally behind him, that's where it's important. And this is where I find myself just completely intrigued. The handful of times that I've interviewed Mikey Keene, much respect. Great young man, very intellectual, and he's just respectful. Pretty hard not to like him. Now, again, I don't get to go to the weight room and watch them work out and all that, but he looks a little bit bigger than he was. He was obviously a skinny kid. He kind of went through this weight, this offseason in the weight room. He needed to add bulk. That's not any secret. He looks better. That's going to help him. On the other side, Plumlee, just using him as an example, he's a natural freak. He's one of the fastest guys in college football. He takes his shirt off. He has nothing but muscle. But that doesn't mean he still can't lead. There's different ways to do it. And again, that's part of the complexity of it. I've got a few things down here as just an example. These guys see them working, But after we get out of spring ball, no matter who's ahead or not, the important time is one where Gus and those guys don't even get to be around. This is something a lot of people don't know. The players are around the strength and conditioning staff more than anybody, and it's by light years. In the summer, coaches are not allowed to coach. I want to say that again. In the summer, coaches are not allowed to coach. The NCAA rules are bizarre, and I'm sure players are texting or sending messages, hey, what would you do in this situation and stuff. Anyway, you're not going to stop that, but they can't literally go out and coach them. The strength staff can do a lot of things with them, though, and it's kind of the go-between. If somebody's out of line or anything else, or good, for that matter, too, it goes both ways. The strength staff passes along information to the football coaching staff. It's not a rocket science thing here. During that time, the players will go throw by themselves, the offensive play. That's the biggest thing, because continuity in the passing game is by far the thing that takes the most time. And that's where the transfer portal comes in, and I'll touch on that in a moment. If Plumlee is the guy, how quickly can he assimilate his passing style, his knowledge of the playbook, and mesh it with all the guys that are returning? And then with the portal, you have Hudson, who's a very talented player, came over from Auburn. And then you got some guys that are kind of rising up. Like, as an example, is Jalen Griffin going to develop and be a guy that competes at the boundary spot this year? We don't know. But maybe he just has a great rapport with one or both of those quarterbacks, so he gets to play more. All of that will happen in the offseason in the months of May, June, July, and then fall camp begins in August, and then it continues. And just that's when the coaches can come back in and do stuff again. The other point about this, there's going to be a freshman. It happens every year at every program. One of the and UCF's got really talented freshmen. Maybe it's Xavier Townsend. I have no idea. I'll just pick him as an example. One of them could help dictate who ends up winning the job as well. While they're not a transfer portal guy, it's still a new blood situation. Wasn't on the roster last year. How do they do? And Xavier, for instance, won't arrive until the spring because he attends Berkeley Prep here in Tampa, where I am, and they don't allow guys to leave early. It's old school mentality. They do not allow early enrollees. So with that, you have to remember, we don't know when the job is going to be won. We really don't know when the job is going to be lost. Maybe it's just one guy's just better than the other, and it wasn't that a player didn't do well. With that, the other point is the overall roster of quarterbacks at UCF is very odd right now. There are 5 guys kind of coming into it plus one, and that is Plumlee and Keene. Joey Gatewood is a 5th-year senior. You got Castellanos, who's the true freshman, talented player, and then Parker Navarro. Now, Navarro is like a redshirt sophomore, and at the end of the year, he kind of replaced Gatewood as the runner down near the goal line. He's a good athlete. Does Gatewood finally take the move to a tight end or a big receiver? Does Navarro leave if he doesn't make the top 2? I mean, these are just generic questions. What if Plumlee isn't as good as I think he's going to be, and he's not in the top 2? We just don't know, because you got to go literally. Spring's just the beginning of this battle. You have to go through the summer, and that's where no eyeballs are. Only the players will really know because they go throw. And then there's some information that the strength and conditioning staff will pass on to Gus, etc. That's how it works at every program. The NCAA, that while I can't stand it as a general institution, it's very poor at its job. Having that across the board for everybody is just unique, because you're going to find out about a guy or two. You're going to hear something about, hey, so-and-so's really developed, but you don't know. It's really intriguing with college football. It's the only sport that really operates in this manner. It's bizarre. And then we get to fall camp, and I'm just going to make a little projection here. 1 or 2 of the freshmen are going to do something to help. Or it could be running back, it could be tight end. They've got really talented players across the board coming in. The skill talent for UCF is really elevating in terms of depth. When they lose Jalen and when they lose O'Keefe, etc., after this year, they're still going to be really good. That's very important to note, just in general. And next year, they'll have more continuity regardless. And also, there's a chance of more guys after the spring, especially across college football, jumping into the portal. I mentioned this in the article at Inside the Knights. I'm going to mention it here. You don't know. You might get a dominant offensive guard out of the portal. You might get another tight end out of the portal. You might get a receiver you just can't pass on. And then they just got to come in summer and assimilate with these quarterbacks. The number of pieces here is not algebra. It is calculus. I like to use that analogy once in a while. It's no more true in any other situation than this one. Quarterback play in college football is a pain. You don't get anywhere near the legal time of practice with coaches to be a quarterback, especially with the passing game, because it's just about thousands of reps. You cannot possibly ever get enough reps. Can't do it. I don't care if you're Bryce Young and you're the most accurate guy in college football. You cannot do it. And then you're adding more pieces. How does UCF do with all of that and combining it is fascinating to me, and I'm guessing it's probably fascinating to most of the guys and gals out there listening as well, because quarterback drives the bus, man. And I'm talking about the Gus bus here. He's a quarterback guy, and he needs guys that are at least semi-mobile, in my opinion, to be really good. That's why I still think, while Keene could start, I think Plumlee will finish the year as the starter, or at least get most of the snap. I really don't know how it's going to break down, but it's just fascinating. So one last thing before I get out of here, doing a lot of prospect profiles. I've traveled a ton again this spring, been to 4 Under Armour events, been to countless 7-on-7 events, and spring ball is getting ready to start in a couple of weeks here in Florida. I'll add more. There's a few kids before I do a prospect profile that I throw up at Inside the Nights that I want to see live because I want to see their body and stuff. I've got a few notes for myself, but you're going to see a lot of them. Cormani McLean, just as an example, he, in my opinion, is as good a player as there is in the country. He lives over in Lakeland. UCF and every school in the country is recruiting him. I don't think he'll go to UCF, but how they play early this next season could change that. UCF is the wild card with every single school, or every single prospect, excuse me, in the state of Florida. It's year 2. You should have some chemistry, especially on defense. Offense, obviously, I just went over, is a little more complex. But if you're going to get a guy like that to really look at your program and others, how you start out is important. I'm just doing baseline evaluations. This is who they are. It's not really about the recruitment. It's about how good is this guy. And in my opinion, as I mentioned with a player that I put up on an article late on Tuesday night, Jabril Rawls out of Pensacola Catholic. There are a lot of guys that aren't getting anywhere near the attention they deserve. I'm not saying he's Cormani. Cormani is very unique, but he's really, really good, and he's only got a handful of Power 5 offers. If he played down here in Central Florida, in Orlando, or he played at Cocoa, or if he played at Lakeland like Lake Gibson with Cormani, he'd have more offers. Do not discount UCF jumping in on any one kid that I put in one of these articles. They're savvy like anybody else. And when they go out this spring and evaluate, which is coming up in a few weeks, they'll be able to, per NCAA rules, to send coaches out and go evaluate. There's going to be some new offers. It could be Rawls. It could be a lot of different kids. I have no idea who it's going to be, so I'm casting a very wide net. There'll be a lot of Central Florida area kids, Kissimmee, or, St. Petersburg, etc. But there's also going to be a lot of kids that you may not know much about because they're from the Panhandle. They might be from Fort Myers, etc. And I'm not going to put a kid in an article that I don't think can play at UCF, period. That's just not going to happen. So keep that in mind. If you don't see UCF as an offer, don't be surprised, but it's still early. UCF is going to look at the state of Florida and recruit it very hard from top to bottom, meaning from Miami all the way up around the Panhandle to Pensacola, right on the Alabama border down by Gulf Shores. So going to see a lot of those over the next couple of months. I really enjoy doing it, and I like the scouting aspect. Last thing, please hit like and subscribe and hit that notification button. Going to be having some more podcasts talking about spring ball. Now that we're getting kind of towards the back end, I've got a press conference I'll go to tomorrow. I'll talk to Travis a little bit about what his defense is doing, and we'll see what players they bring out. But that's always fun. So I think that it's to the point now where spring ball is interesting. The basic stuff is over. We'll get some more detail, and it's just more fun. I'll do a podcast about what happens with UCF in the next couple of days. I might be able to do 2. This depends on what kind of information I get and what the kids sell me beyond Travis Williams. You just don't know. So Thursday for sure, maybe possibly on Friday as well. We'll see. Hopefully the information is good. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Thank you very much, and God bless.